Centuries ago, when people lived in harmony with the land, there existed a fertile and prosperous region. This vast region of fertile land was occupied by two villages. Many tales are told around the campfire in the cool evenings about the history and origins of the two villages, but they all end the same way, with conflict, war, and strife. Countless men, women, and children have fallen on both sides over many years. The villagers from both sides were tired of the fighting, the fear, the bloodshed. But there seemed to be an invisible force keeping the fires of war blazing fiercely. The villages were separated by a boundary of rocks, trees, a small river, and old landmarks. Umunze was rich with many tuber crops, but yams were the pride of the village. They cultivated yams so intensely that they became known as the village of yams. Every family had a huge yam barn where yams were stored either for daily consumption, trade, or planting. The villagers were banned from interacting with palm oil because palm oil came from Oji, the land of their enemies, the neighboring kingdom. Oji was known as the land that flows red because their main occupation was the production of palm oil. The village had many palm trees which the villagers processed into palm oil and many other products. They offered these products in exchange for other items which they needed. The villagers were happy because the oil could be exchanged for many vegetables, grains, and fruits. Similarly, yams were also banned in Oji, as it reminds them of Umunze, that is filled with the murderers of their dead brethren. Umunze and Oji were close neighbors, sharing many aspects of their culture in a stream but plagued by constant violent clashes. In spite of this, both villagers increased in prosperity and population. If a palm tree is felled to create more space for yam heaps, the people of Oji will retaliate violently, and lives would be lost. No one knew how or when the fighting started, but still, they fought bravely to protect their land from the apparent greed and bloodthirst of their neighbors. On the outskirts of Umunze, there lived a poor widow and her daughter Ifunaya. Ifunaya's late father was a famous and renowned hunter who was skilled in making traps, as well as in the ways of the forest animals. He would disappear into the forest for days and return with many wild game. He would exchange his animals for crops and other items his family needed, and so did not need to cultivate the land, as was the common craft in Umunze. So when he did not return from his forest trip, his family fell into poverty and only survived by knowledge of herbs and a small plot of land which belonged to Ifunaya's late grandfather. Ifunaya had her mother's beauty and full figure, but she was possessed by her father's sense of wonder and adventure. She often sleepwalked over long distances. This habit of hers was a source of constant worry to her mother, who refused to get used to raising a search party for her own child on more than one occasion. Ifunaya could not seem to understand the reason for her sleepwalking, and nothing seemed to help. In Umunze, guards could be seen in full battle clothes. They all had the same look on their faces, like they knew something was wrong. Also, the king was training a whole new batch of young boys, some many years away from adulthood. When asked by the village elders, he simply replied that he wanted to improve the battle readiness and number of his troops just in case. But the elders knew different. A rabbit doesn't just run around in the daytime unless something is chasing it, one of them said passively. The others seemed to repeat such proverbs. One night, after a hot bowl of yam and spicy porridge, Ifunaya drifted into a deep sleep right on the mat outside her mother's hut. The weather was warm and a cool, relaxing breeze was blowing outside. Just a few moments ago, Ifunaya had been trading jokes and funny stories with her mother as they ate their dinner. They were both tired from toiling in the farm all day. "I can just imagine Papa's surprise if he ever finds out that you are this strong," Ifunaya said, laughing. "I don't blame you. If I don't, how will you eat yam in this house and have the energy to be telling me rubbish? Besides, you even worked harder than I did today, Daddy's princess." Her mother replied, laughing harder as Ifunaya feigned a pout and folded her arms. "May the sounds of our laughter reach him in the bosom of our ancestors." "Amen," said Ifunaya. After the laughter died down, Ifunaya's mother put the empty bowl aside and set the mat properly, like she was smoothing away worries. She looked at her daughter's face in the moonlight, at the way Ifunaya's eyes were already heavy. There was always something innocent about her when sleep came. It made her look like she knew nothing of war, nothing of hatred, nothing of the blood that had soaked the soil between Umunze and Oji for years. "Sleep, my child," her mother whispered. Ifunaya mumbled something that sounded like a joke, even in her sleep, and her mother smiled sadly. She sat for a while, listening to the night sounds, the distant croak of frogs, the soft moving of leaves, and then she entered the hut and shut the door. That was how it always happened. Ifunaya hadn't sleepwalked in a long time. Her mother thought she had finally outgrown the habit. She hadn't. In her unconscious state, she stirred on the mat, turned once, then sat up as if someone had called her name. Her eyes were open, but empty, staring into nothing. She stood and walked around the hut for a while, slow and quiet, like a spirit that did not want to wake the living. Then she took the path behind their hut. This path led straight into the thick forest, the same direction as Oji, the land of their sworn enemies. The forest swallowed her the way the river swallows a stone. The trees stood tall and silent, their branches forming a roof that blocked the moonlight. The air smelled of wet earth and old leaves. Ifunaya's bare feet stepped on thorns, on sharp twigs, on stones, but she did not flinch. Sleep was holding her hand. She wandered deeper, pushing through bushes, brushing against rough bark. Somewhere in the darkness, an owl cried. Somewhere else, something heavy moved and stopped. Still Ifunaya walked. By the time the first light of dawn began to stretch across the sky, she was far from home. Her wrapper was torn from snagging on thorns. Her skin had small cuts that bled and dried, yet her face remained peaceful, like a child resting after play. That same dawn, the Prince of Oji was out on his early morning stroll. He liked the forest paths because they were quiet. They did not bow. They did not praise. They did not remind him of the crown waiting for his head. On those walks, he was just a man breathing the morning air. Until he saw her. At first he thought it was a trapped animal, a fallen hunter, a corpse. His steps slowed. His hand went to the knife at his waist, not out of wickedness but out of caution. The forest had its own rules. Then he came closer and saw the curve of a woman's shoulder, the scattered hair, the gentle rise and fall of her chest. She was alive. He stared at her torn clothes, at the wounds on her arms, at the dried blood on her knee. He was puzzled because she looked as if she had fought the forest itself. Yet she slept without fear, without shame, without even a crease of worry on her forehead. And her face. Her face was too calm for someone lying in enemy territory. Umunze, his mind whispered, because even in sleep her skin carried the scent of yam and smoke, the scent of the land he had been taught to hate. His first thought was what any prince of Oji would think. Call the guards. Let them deal with this. Let the war do what war always does. But he did not move. Instead, he watched her for a while, fascinated in a way that made no sense to him. He wondered how a girl could look so soft and still end up with wounds like a soldier. He wondered why she was here. He wondered if the gods were playing one of their cruel jokes again. Then he sighed, bent down slowly, and reached for her hand. It was cold. He could have left her, but he chose to help. And as he lifted her gently, like she was something fragile, a sound came from deeper in the forest. Footsteps, more than one. The prince froze. The prince did not wait to find out who the footsteps belonged to. He carried Ifunaya like a man carrying a secret and moved quickly through a narrow path he alone seemed to know. The forest tried to hold them back with hanging vines and stubborn thorns, but the prince pushed on, his breathing steady, his mind racing. By the time the first rays of sunlight fully appeared, the tall walls of Oji's palace stood before them like a warning. Guards at the gate almost rushed forward with their spears until they saw who it was. "My prince," one of them said, eyes widening as he noticed the girl in his arms. The prince's voice was calm, but it carried weight. "Open the gate and say nothing." Inside the palace, he called the maidens, not the guards. Women with quick feet and gentle hands came running, their eyes curious but obedient. They laid Ifunaya on a clean mat, wiped her face, washed the dirt from her feet, and cleaned her wounds with warm water and herbs. One maiden gasped when she saw the deep scratches on Ifunaya's arm. "This poor girl has been through hell," she whispered. The prince said nothing. He only watched, his brows drawn together, as if he was trying to solve a riddle that had fallen asleep in his palace. When Ifunaya finally woke, she jerked up like a startled goat. Her eyes widened at the fine walls, the carved pillars, the scent of palm oil in the air. Then she saw the maidens, their red-stained hands, and she shrank back. Where am I?" Her voice came out small. "In Oji," one maiden replied, without thinking. Ifunaya's heart jumped into her throat. Oji, enemy land, land that flows red. The prince stepped forward quickly. Do not fear, he said gently. You are safe here. Safe in the house of the people they swore to never touch. He offered her new clothes, soft and clean, tied neatly at her waist. Wear this, he said, looking away as if looking at her too long would expose him. You were hurt. The forest was not kind to you. Ifunaya held the cloth with trembling fingers. Why did you help me? She asked, suspicion and fear wrestling on her face. The prince paused. Because you were sleeping, he said quietly, and because you looked like someone who did not deserve to die in the bush. Later, when she was steadier, he took her outside, not to frighten her, but to show her something, like a man showing a guest the pride of his home. Rows and rows of palm trees stretched across the land like soldiers standing in peace. Women and men worked beneath them, cutting fruits, pressing them, singing low songs that carried through the air. Huge pots of palm oil boiled over fire, thick and red like liquid sunlight. Carved calabashes sat in neat lines, ready to be filled. Soaps were being molded, pomade was being mixed. Even small lamps were being prepared from the same red gold. Ifunaya stared, unable to hide her wonder. So this is what you people do, she murmured, half to herself. The prince gave a small smile. And you people hide yams like they are babies, he replied, shy humor slipping out. To her surprise, Ifunaya laughed. The sound escaped her before fear could catch it. The prince laughed too, softly, as if he was ashamed of how happy it made him. They walked slowly, talked, and for the first time, the hatred between yam and oil did not feel like a command. It felt like a story someone else had written. But as they turned back toward the palace, Ifunaya noticed something that made her smile fade. At the far end of the courtyard, the king's chief guard was watching them closely, his eyes sharp like a knife that had just been sharpened. The days in Oji began to pass like calm water, smooth on the surface, but hiding deep things underneath. One morning, the prince took Ifunaya to a wide-open field behind the palace. As soon as they entered, the sound of metal and shouting filled the air. Young men were training hard with spears and swords, their bodies shining with sweat, their feet kicking up dust like war was already calling them. Some of them paused when they saw her. A few stared too long. Then the prince cleared his throat and walked forward with the kind of authority that made people remember who he was. This is Ifunaya, he said simply. She is my guest. His friends came closer, some curious, some amused. One tall youth with a scar on his cheek smiled and bowed playfully. A guest from the forest, he teased. Ifunaya forced a small smile, but her eyes stayed on their weapons. Why are you all training like this? She asked. Is there going to be war? The field fell strangely quiet for a moment. The prince's friends exchanged quick looks, then one of them laughed too loudly. War? He repeated, as if the word tasted bitter. We are just sharpening ourselves. Another added, the gods will soon decide. Ifunaya frowned. Decide what? But they dodged her question like a goat dodges a rope. They spoke of strength, of duty, of honor, yet no one spoke plainly. The prince touched her elbow gently, guiding her away, and Ifunaya understood that what was coming was no laughing matter. Later that day, he took her to where the palm fruits were processed. This time, he did not just show her, he placed the work in her hands. Use your fingers, he instructed softly. Press like this. Ifunaya hesitated, then laughed when the slippery fruit almost escaped her grip. So, your red gold is stubborn, she said. And your yams are proud, the prince replied, his eyes on her face. She worked, her hands staining red, her laughter returning. The prince watched her like he was memorizing the way she smiled. He had seen many women in fine clothes, women who walked like peacocks, women who spoke like they were chewing bitter cola. But Ifunaya was different. Her big brown eyes carried stories. Her red hair, rare and wild, looked like it held fire. And the more her wounds healed, the more he realized something that frightened him. His admiration was turning into love. One evening, when the sky was dim and the air smelled of smoke and palm, he called her to the palace garden. He stood awkwardly like a boy, not like a prince. Then he spoke. Marry me, Ifunaya. The words fell heavy between them. He promised comfort, safety, a place by his side, a life where she would never fear hunger again, never sleep on a mat outside a leaking hut. Ifunaya's eyes softened, but her head shook slowly. "My prince," she said gently, "I am from a poor yam village. I am from the enemy side. If I stand beside you, I will not bring peace. I will bring fire. We can overcome it," he insisted, stepping closer. "We will prove them wrong." Ifunaya looked at him sadly. "Your confidence is too dangerous," she whispered. Her wounds healed, and with a heavy heart, she began to prepare to go home. On the morning of her departure, the prince walked with her to the edge of the palace grounds. He did not beg. He did not shout. He only held out a beautifully carved calabash filled with palm oil, the red shining inside like the sun trapped in a bowl. "For you," he said quietly, "so you will not forget Oji." Ifunaya accepted it with both hands. "How can I forget," she murmured, "when I will carry your land scent back to my people?" And as she turned toward the forest path, she did not see the chief guard step out from behind a pillar, his face hard, his eyes following her like a curse that had just found a direction. Ifunaya returned home with feet that felt heavier than her body. The forest that had swallowed her now spat her back out, tired, thin, but alive. As soon as she stepped into the small clearing behind their hut, her mother rushed out like a woman who had been fighting death with her bare hands. Ifunaya. The widow did not even ask questions first. She grabbed her daughter and held her so tight that Ifunaya almost lost her breath. Her mother's whole body was shaking. Tears poured down her cheeks without shame. "Where have you been?" she cried. "Do you want to kill me before my time? Do you know how many nights I have not slept?" Ifunaya's throat tightened. "Mama, I did not mean to," she whispered. "It happened again." Her mother pulled back and looked at her face, her arms, the healed scratches that were still faintly visible. She was still wiping tears when her eyes fell on the calabash in Ifunaya's hands. The widow froze. Her face changed the way the sky changes before rain. "Where did you get this?" she asked slowly. Ifunaya lowered her eyes. "The Prince of Oji gave it to me," she said, as if saying it softly would reduce the danger. Her mother snatched the calabash like it was a snake. She lifted the lid slightly and the red scent rose into the air. Palm oil. In Umunze, palm oil was forbidden by the priest. They said it carried curses, that it invited disaster, that it was the blood of their enemies. Her mother's eyes darted around, as if the priest himself was hiding behind a tree. Then she hurried into the hut and shoved the calabash deep under a basket of dried leaves. "No one must see this," she hissed. That night, when the village had gone quiet and only crickets spoke, her mother lit a small fire and brought out roasted yam. The yam was hot, its skin blackened, the inside white and soft. Ifunaya's stomach growled, but she waited, watching her mother like a child watching a secret unfold. Her mother pulled out the calabash. "If they catch this in our house, they will call us cursed," she murmured. "And probably banish us or worse," she said more to herself. Then she did something Ifunaya had never seen before. She sliced the roasted yam, dipped it into the palm oil, sprinkled salt, and held it out to Ifunaya. Ifunaya stared. "Mama, just taste," her mother said, eyes steady. "Taste before you judge." Ifunaya hesitated, fear and curiosity wrestling inside her. Then she took a small bite. Her eyes widened. It was rich, warm, sweet and smoky and salty all at once. The oil hugged the yam like it belonged there. It tasted like something forbidden that should have been normal. "Ha!" Ifunaya gasped, shocked. This is good." Her mother gave a sad smile. "Of course it is." Ifunaya looked up. "So why?" Her mother's face grew serious. She chewed slowly like she was chewing old memories. Then she began. "Before Umunse and Oji became enemies, they were one kingdom," she said quietly. "One land, one people, one king." Ifunaya leaned closer. That king had two sons. One was skilled with yams, the other was skilled with palm oil. They both had gifts. They both had pride. When their father died, they fought over the throne, and what started as a dispute became a wound. Her mother's voice lowered. Greed entered. Pride entered. And before they knew it, brother was lifting knife against brother. Ifunaya's stomach twisted. And then the priest, her mother continued, eyes dark. He did not heal the wound. He poured salt inside it. He twisted their pride into hatred. The yam people banned palm oil. The oil people mocked yam farmers. And every generation that was born after that only inherited anger, not truth. Her mother reached out and touched Ifunaya's cheek gently. My child, things are not always what they seem. Be careful who you believe. Ifunaya swallowed hard, the taste of oil still on her tongue, and suddenly the prince's shy smile returned in her mind like a warning. Outside, far away in the village square, a drum sounded once, then twice, like the land itself was calling the people together. That night, Ifunaya tried to sleep inside the hut. After what her mother had told her, after the taste of forbidden oil and the sound of drums in the distance, her spirit did not feel settled. Her mother watched her closely, like a woman guarding a candle from the wind. Lie here, her mother insisted, spreading an old cloth on the floor. Do not sleep outside again. Ifunaya obeyed. She lay down, eyes open for a long time, listening to the night. She heard the insects. She heard the faraway voices of men talking. She heard the river like a quiet song. Then sleep came. Soft, heavy, and once again it took her by the hand. Ifunaya's eyes opened in the darkness, empty and far away. She sat up slowly. Her mother, tired from worry, had finally drifted off. Ifunaya stood, stepped over her mother's sleeping feet, and walked out of the hut like a shadow. This time she did not go toward the forest. Her feet carried her inward, toward the heart of Umunze, toward the palace. The palace of Umunze was not a place a poor widow's daughter should enter at night, not even in daylight. Tall walls, strong gates, guards that did not smile. So when the guards saw a girl walking calmly through the entrance like she belonged there, they shouted. Stop there! Spears crossed in front of Ifunaya's chest. One of them grabbed her arm roughly. Who are you? Are you mad? Ifunaya did not answer. She only blinked slowly, her face peaceful like she was walking through a dream path only she could see. Thief, another guard hissed. Maybe a spy. A slap was already rising in the air when a voice cut through the tension. Put your hand down. The guard stiffened immediately. The Prince of Umunze stepped forward, not in full royal robes, but in simple cloth, like a man who had come out for air. He was young, broad-shouldered, with eyes that looked too sharp for sleep to be on his face. Yet his mouth was curved, amused. What is this? He asked, looking Ifunaya up and down. My prince, we found her wandering into the palace, a guard said quickly. She refuses to speak. The prince moved closer, studying Ifunaya's calm eyes, the red tint in her hair that caught moonlight like ember. He expected fear. He expected trembling. But she stood there like a person listening to music others could not hear. She is not a thief, he said slowly. A thief would be sweating. The guards exchanged looks. He leaned slightly toward her. Girl, he called gently, do you know where you are? Ifunaya's lips parted. Home, she murmured. The prince's brows lifted. Then he laughed, a quiet sound of disbelief. Home, in my father's palace. Ifunaya looked at him fully then, and for a moment something like awareness flickered. Are you a prince? She asked, voice soft. I am, he replied, and his eyes warmed. And you are walking in your sleep, aren't you? Ifunaya's face fell like a child caught doing something strange. It happens, she whispered. Instead of anger, the prince felt curiosity pulling at him. He spoke with her right there, asking her name, asking where she lived, and when he heard the widow at the outskirts, his expression changed. Not disgust, not pride, just surprise. He found her innocence refreshing. In the palace, maidens laughed with fake sweetness and spoke with heavy pride, always trying to impress him, always trying to trap his attention like a bird. But this girl, this poor girl, looked at him like he was just a person with questions. Over the next few days, the prince held her in the palace, not forcefully, but with a gentle invitation. And Ifunaya, now awake, gracefully accepted, still secretly grateful that she had not been punished. He showed her the wealth of yams as if he was showing her the heart of Umunze itself. He took her to barns so full of yam tubers that Ifunaya's mouth opened in awe. Yams were stacked like treasure, like the village could survive 10 dry seasons and still eat like kings. "See," the prince said proudly, "this is why they call us the land of yams." He made her taste different dishes: pounded yam that stretched like soft clouds, roasted yam that cracked under teeth, yam porridge rich with pepper that made her eyes water. When she coughed, the prince laughed so hard he almost fell off the stool. "Ha ha ha ha, so you can fight the hard ground, but pepper defeats you?" Ifunaya stared at him offended, then burst into laughter too. He was funny, playful, and he made her laugh until her sides hurt, the kind of laughter that makes you forget war exists for a moment. On the day he finally decided to send her home, he did not send her empty-handed. He ordered an escort, strong young men with calm faces, to walk her safely to the outskirts. They carried generous gifts of yams and smoked meat for her mother. Ifunaya protested, embarrassed. "My prince, it is too much." "It is small," he replied, waving his hand. "Tell your mother that Umunze does not eat alone." When her mother saw the palace escort and the gifts, she almost fainted. Alarm sat on her face first, then gratitude fought its way through. She greeted them with shaky respect and accepted the yams with both hands like a blessing that could still bite. Later, after the escort left, her mother opened her small wooden box and brought out rare herbs and spices from deep in the forest. Things hunters and healers knew, things money could not easily buy. "This is what we have," she said quietly. "We will not be ungrateful." And as Ifunaya watched her mother pack the herbs carefully, a strange fear rose inside her. Because now, both sides had noticed her, and the invisible force that kept the fires of war blazing fiercely suddenly felt like it was watching her too. After that night in the palace, Ifunaya's life stopped being quiet. At first it was small things. A basket of yams would appear at their door with palace markings, a piece of smoked meat wrapped neatly in leaves. Once it was even dried fish and fine salt, things poor people in the outskirts did not see often. Ifunaya's mother would stare at the gifts like they were both blessing and trouble. "Why is the prince doing this?" she asked one morning, voice low. Ifunaya did not know how to answer. She only helped carry the yams inside, her mind full of the prince's laughter, the way he had teased her until she nearly cried from laughing. But Umunze was not a place where gifts stayed secret. People began to notice. Women passing by slowed down to look. Children pointed. Men in the village square started to talk with their heads close together. Even the elders' wives began to whisper like wind passing through dry leaves. Why is the prince so interested in a poor widow's daughter? She must have used charm. Or maybe she is carrying his child. No, maybe she is a spy. The words were sharp, and Ifunaya felt them like small stones thrown at her back whenever she walked to the stream. Then one afternoon, a palace messenger arrived. He was dressed in fine cloth, his sandals clean, his voice loud enough for the whole compound to hear. He greeted Ifunaya's mother properly, then dropped the message like a drumbeat. "The Prince of Umunze sends his words," he announced. "He asks for the hand of Ifunaya in marriage." For a moment, everything stopped. Then the village exploded. Some women rejoiced as if they were the ones being lifted into royalty. "Ah, our daughter is blessed," they shouted. "The gods have favored the poor." Others smiled with teeth but hid jealousy in their eyes. By evening, new rumors had already grown legs. They said Ifunaya had sneaked into the palace at night to seduce the prince. They said she had bewitched him with her strange red hair. They said her mother was a witch who had sold herbs to the palace to trap the royal blood. Ifunaya heard it all. Some people said it to her face with fake concern. Some said it behind her, loud enough for her to hear. Her heart became a place of noise. Because in the middle of all this, she remembered the Prince of Oji, the gentle one who had carried her wounded body like it mattered, the shy one who had offered her comfort and safety, the one she had refused because she feared the fire it would bring. And now the Yam Prince, with his joy and warmth, with his playful tongue and generous hands, was asking her to become his wife. Ifunaya would sit outside at night staring at the dark forest line, feeling torn like cloth caught on a nail. Two princes. Two kingdoms. One heart that did not know where to rest. Meanwhile, across the river and rocks, the news did not stay in Umunze alone. A traitor carried it. A gossip carried it. A wandering drummer carried it with songs that added extra salt. By the time the story reached Oji, it had grown into something bigger. They said the girl the prince had loved had chosen another prince. They said she was going to marry the enemy. When the Prince of Oji heard, his chest tightened like a rope was being pulled around it. He felt hurt first, then confusion, then a bitter anger he did not recognize in himself. He remembered her laughter in the palm groves. He remembered her eyes widening at the red gold. He remembered the way she had called his confidence too dangerous. So why would she now accept another prince? That night, he did not sleep. And before dawn, he made a decision. He would sneak into Umunze and see her with his own eyes. Because sometimes, the heart does not believe until it bleeds. The palm oil prince did not enter Umunze like a warrior. He entered like a shadow. He covered his head, dressed like an ordinary man, and moved through paths traders used, avoiding the main roads where guards asked questions with spears. His heart beat hard, not because he feared death, but because he feared what he might see. He did not go to the palace. He went to the stream. That stream was the same one both villages claimed as theirs, the same one that had tasted blood during old fights, yet still flowed as if it did not know hatred. It was outside Umunze, close enough for Ifunaya to reach without raising too much attention. When Ifunaya came, she almost dropped the pot of water on her head. She stopped so suddenly that the water inside shook. "My prince," she whispered, eyes wide. He stepped out from behind a tree, and for a moment he only looked at her. His eyes searched her face like he was looking for the truth hidden inside it. He looked thinner, harder around the jaw, like sleep had refused him. "Ifunaya," he said quietly. Her throat tightened. "You should not be here." "I know," he replied. Then he took a breath, and the question came out like a wound opening. "Is it true you want to marry him?" Ifunaya's lips parted, but words did not come quickly. The stream gurgled beside them like it was listening. I did not say yes," she finally said. "The Prince of Umunze sent a message. The village is shouting. Everyone is talking." "But will you marry him?" he asked again gently, yet his voice failing to hide his doubt. Ifunaya looked away. "You know why I refused you," she whispered. "You know the danger." The palm oil prince's eyes hardened slightly. "And yet you are still here," he said. "Alive. Standing in Umunze, while I returned to Oji with an empty hand." Ifunaya flinched. "I returned because I had a mother who was dying of worry, because I did not want blood to follow me." She turned to face him fully, desperation rising in her. "Listen to me. My mother told me the truth. The two villages were once one kingdom. One king, two sons, one loved yams, one loved palm oil. A dispute over the throne split the land. Greed and pride turned brother against brother. The priest twisted it. He banned palm oil here, and he fed hatred like a hungry child." The prince's eyes narrowed, not at her, but at the story. "Our priest says something too," he said slowly. Ifunaya's brows lifted. "What did he say?" The prince looked at the moving stream, then back at her. "He says the gods have spoken," he replied. "He says if we do not attack first, Oji will be wiped out. He says Umunze is preparing to destroy us." Ifunaya's stomach dropped. "But our priest says the same thing," she whispered, as if saying it loudly would make it more real. "He says if we do not fight first, Oji will swallow us." They stood in silence, the weight of it pressing down on both of them. Two priests. Two villages. Two different lands. Yet both claiming the gods demanded war. "How?" Ifunaya breathed. "How can the gods speak the same lie to two enemies?" The prince's face tightened. "Unless," he began, then stopped, as if the thought scared him. Ifunaya's mother's voice returned in her mind, clear like the stream beside her. "Things are not always what they seem. Be careful who you believe." Ifunaya's eyes slowly widened as the terrifying thought formed fully in her head. Someone was using the god's name. Someone was pulling the rope from both sides, making both villages dance like puppets. And if that was true, then the real enemy was not yam or oil. The real enemy was much closer. A twig snapped behind them. Both of them turned sharply. And in the bushes just across the stream, a figure crouched low, listening. Ifunaya's blood turned cold when she saw the figure in the bushes. For a second, Nobody moved. Not even the stream seemed to breathe. Then the figure shifted as if to run. The palm oil prince reacted fast. He stepped forward like he wanted to chase, but Ifunaya grabbed his wrist tightly. "No," she whispered. "Not here. Not now." He looked at her, anger in his eyes. "Someone is listening." "I know," Ifunaya replied, forcing herself to stay calm. "That is why you must go back home secretly for now." His jaw tightened. "And leave you here?" "If you stay, you will be caught," she said. "And if they catch you, war will start today, not tomorrow." The prince stared at her face, then nodded slowly, like a man swallowing bitter cola. "I will go," he said. "But Ifunaya, do not play with my heart." "I won't," she promised. "Give me time. I will find a way." He disappeared into the trees like a shadow returning to its owner. That same day, Ifunaya found a way to see the yam prince privately. Not in the open where ears grew like grass, but behind an old yam barn, where the smell of earth covered secrets. When he came, he was smiling. But her face was not smiling. "Ifunaya," he said playful, "why do you look like someone stole your yam?" She took a breath. "My prince, I need you to listen and not interrupt." She told him everything. How she sleepwalked into Oji, how the palm oil prince carried her and treated her wounds, how he loved her, how she saw young men training with spears and swords in Oji, and how the words were always the same. "The gods will soon decide." She told him about the priest's warning in Umunze and the priest's warning in Oji. At first jealousy rose in his eyes like fire. "So you have another prince," he said bitterly. "If I wanted to deceive you, would I tell you?" Ifunaya asked softly. The yam prince went quiet. Then he nodded. "Speak," he said. "I trust your heart." That night, Ifunaya did what nobody had ever done. She brought both princes together in secret. Face to face, they argued first. They accused each other. They spoke of pride, of fear, of blood that had already been spilled. Then the words began to fit like broken pieces joining. "The priest told us the same thing," the palm oil prince said slowly. "And he looks the same," the yam prince added, eyes widening. "Same voice, same marks." Ifunaya's stomach tightened. "Because he is the same man," she whispered. A terrible silence fell. They finally understood. The chief priest had been serving both villages in secret. He banned palm oil in one land, forbade trade and contact, and fed hatred like it was his daily food. He wanted the villages to destroy each other, then enslave the survivors and rule all the land. "There is no God in this," the yam prince said, voice shaking. "Only a hungry man." They did not waste time. Both princes rushed back to their palaces under the cover of night, hearts pounding, begging their fathers with one voice. "Delay the war," they pleaded. "Just one day." And somewhere in the darkness the priest smiled, because he already knew they had found out. Morning came with a strange announcement. In Umunze, the drums that usually called men to sharpen their spears now called them to gather without weapons. In Oji, the red flags that signaled attack stayed folded. People whispered, confused, angry, hopeful, all at once. The chiefs of both villages stood before their people and declared a pause. "One day," the king of Umunze said, his voice heavy. "We will wait, one day." In Oji, the king of palm oil did the same. His eyes were suspicious, but curiosity sat inside his silence. Two sons begging with the same urgency was not something a father ignored, even if pride tried to make him deaf. A plan was set. The priest was called to perform rituals as usual, the way he always did when war was near. He came with confidence, dressed in sacred cloth, eyes shining like a man who believed everyone was still blind. But this time, the ground was not empty. Hidden witnesses were in place, guards loyal to the princes, elders from both sides, and even Ifunaya and her mother covered like ordinary women, hearts pounding. They stood behind trees, behind huts, behind pillars, watching. The priest began his chants, raising his staff high. He spoke of blood. He spoke of destiny. He spoke as if the gods were sitting on his tongue. Then the princes stepped out. "Enough," the yam prince said. The palm oil prince moved beside him. "We want you to speak before both kings," he added. The priest's smile twitched. They brought him to the open square where both kings sat, face to face for the first time in years, their eyes like old wounds meeting air. Questions came like arrows. The priest answered smoothly at first, but under pressure his tongue slipped. One moment he claimed the gods demanded Umunze's blood, the next he claimed the gods demanded Oji's oil. Contradictions fell from his mouth like rotten fruit. The elders murmured. The kings leaned forward. And finally the priest broke. "Yes," he screamed, shaking with rage. "I shaped the prophecies. I banned palm oil. I forbade trade. I kept you hungry for hate because it made you obedient." His eyes were wild. "When you destroyed each other, my mercenaries would enslave the survivors. I would rule everything." Then he laughed, sharp and ugly. "But it is too late. They are already on the way." The air changed. And for the first time in generations, yam farmers and palm oil makers stood side by side. Men who once raised spears at each other now raised them toward the same enemy. The mercenaries came like locusts. But they met a united land. The battle was hard. Dust covered faces, blood fell. Princes fought shoulder to shoulder, not as enemies, but as brothers. And when the priest tried to escape on horseback, the gods he lied about did not save him. His horse stumbled, he fell, and his neck struck the ground with a final crack. Silence followed. After, peace came slowly, like healing skin. Trade opened. Palm oil crossed the boundary. Yams crossed the river. The two lands became one kingdom again. Ifunaya was rewarded with the land that once belonged to the priest. And though both princes still loved her, the story slowed now, because she was no longer just a poor girl. She was the girl who united two kingdoms and exposed lies in the name of the gods. In the end, Ifunaya stood between yam fields and palm trees, the two princes by her side as the elders said softly, "Sometimes the smallest feet walk the path that changes the world."